We're going to go now to Mr. Jerry Cox. It's always great to talk to him. He is the president of Family Council. You need to check out the website, familycouncil.org, for all things, social issues, traditional American values right here in Arkansas. They're doing great work. Jerry, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing great, and I was just enjoying listening to Ronald Reagan's voice.
No.
There on the intro. That was so good.
Well, Jerry, not to point out our age difference, but you actually get to, you remember him actually being in the office. And, until somebody like Trump got in there, I never really thought I never actually was politically conscious enough to know that.
Yeah, well, and I didn't want to pull age rank on you, but I was just sitting there thinking, I bet Paul doesn't even. He's not old enough to remember Reagan being president, but man, oh man, do I ever remember it. And it was like we began this march toward the light when he got elected, because everything was so gloomy and just bad, leading up to that. And then all of a sudden this guy got elected, and it's like, yes, we can do better. Our best days are ahead of us. And he was right.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, he really was.
Anyway, yeah, but we need to talk about Arkansas.
Yeah, let's do it. So I've got this list: Arkansas pro-life laws being challenged in federal court, the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. It's kind of a timeline. We've got Planned Parenthood allies, abortion providers, the ACLU, and you've been on the front lines in this. What can you tell us?
Well, I tell you what, we had so much information there, I almost couldn't get it on one page when I was sending it to you. And I didn't realize we had so many laws that are being challenged right now. These are pro-life laws that are good for the health and safety of women, that regulate abortion here in Arkansas. And altogether, we have eight laws that are in federal court right now that are being challenged by, as you could guess, Planned Parenthood, ACLU types, the abortion doctors, and all that. But these are really good laws that are being challenged. They go all the way back to 2015, and you know what, Paul? Strangely enough, every one of these laws, I think but one, got assigned to the very same federal judge here in Little Rock, and that's Judge Christine Baker. And I just scratched my head, and I've asked lawyers, I said, how is it that all these pro-life laws, supposedly at random, get assigned to this same very, very pro-choice judge? And they just kind of roll their eyes and kind of look at me, and they won't say anything. And so take it however you will, but Judge Baker has struck down every one of these laws, which means that our good Attorney General, Leslie Rutledge, and her staff get to appeal these on up the chain in the courts to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a higher court. And we've seen that court reverse Judge Baker on numerous occasions, and I expect that they'll do the same with some of these laws. We just don't know which ones. But I'll give you an example. We got a law passed this year that says if you're going to do abortions in Arkansas, you need to be an obstetrician gynecologist. We don't need dermatologists and podiatrists out here doing abortion. Makes sense? Yes. Not to the Planned Parenthood folks. They said, no way, we can't do that. And so they're challenging that law. We got a law passed along with our Senator Garner that says you can't abort a child just because the child may have Down syndrome. They're challenging that. We've got a law, one that says that you can't do dismemberment abortions that are, go in and tear the child to pieces and pull it out a piece at a time. That was passed by our friends at Right to Life. They're challenging that. It goes on and on and on. And I'm like, you people are not at all about making abortion safe and rare, as you say. You just want to preserve it at any cost.
You're exactly right. We're talking with Jerry Cox, the president of the Family Council. You find out more at familycouncil.org. Yeah, I see this list here in 2019 Act 619, the Down Syndrome Discrimination by Abortion Protection Act by Senator Trent Gardner prohibits abortion because the child has or may have Down syndrome. Now, we're getting real close to that word eugenics, aren't we, Jerry?
It's scary stuff because if we say that handicapped individuals should not be allowed to live, what in the world does that sound like? And we all know. And that's what these people stand for out here on the Planned Parenthood abortion side of the ledger. I mean, Paul, abortion is really a predatory industry. They find girls who are scared, pregnant, don't know what to do, don't feel like they have anywhere to turn. And they step up there and they say, well, we'll, for a fee, we'll take care of your problem for you. And those girls, running scared, run to those abortion doctors to try to solve a problem. And they end up creating a whole bunch of other problems because then they live for the rest of their life with the knowledge that they took the life or allowed somebody to take the life of their child. And in some cases, this may be the only child they will ever have. Mm-hmm. And, those abortion doctors, I don't know what you say about them, but it is a predatory industry. And see, they can't win when they go to the legislature because our legislature is very pro-life.
Yes.
In fact, Arkansas is now the second most pro-life state in the country. Well, and so when we get a good law passed out at the Capitol, the first thing these people do is they go run into federal court and they run to Judge Baker and they say, help us, strike this law down. And she accommodates them. And then we begin this long, protracted journey through federal court. And, again, after years of litigation, we've seen some good laws upheld, and I believe a bunch of these will be. But in the meantime, they're not being enforced, and the abortion industry marches on.
We need the Supreme Court at some point to reverse this terrible Roe versus Wade decision. I mean, until then, sometimes you can get criticism from the left. Democrat Governor Mike Beebe, he certainly always criticized those of us trying to pass, anti-abortion laws, saying we have to pay money to defend them in court. He claims they're unconstitutional. And I'm thinking to myself, we as citizens have no other choice because we're talking about life and death. We're talking about what I consider to be a genocide. We have to continue to pass these laws and continue to pay money to defend them in court, because what other recourse do we have? I mean, but they go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, well, and see, if what better use of our tax dollars, Paul, than to defend human life? I hear lawmakers. I know you're not saying this, but I hear lawmakers say, "Oh, it's going to cost us too much money." Really? It's a human life. Mm-hmm. And you know what? These good laws that have been allowed to stand are saving the lives of unborn children. If you'll look down at the bottom of that sheet that I sent you, the Woman's Right to Know Act of 2015, that's been about 4 years ago, has already saved over 1,200 lives. And we know that pretty definitively because of the way the reporting is done and the way the abortion facilities have to talk about how much information they gave to women that were seeking abortion. So we can kind of deduct that and figure out, okay, this many women went to the abortion clinic trying to get an abortion, and this many decided not to. Mm-hmm. So we have to believe that the knowledge of what was about to happen to them deterred them from getting an abortion.
Yes.
And we weren't seeing those kind of numbers in previous years before this law was passed. So imagine this, Paul. Imagine if somehow you today could do something with a stroke of a pen, with the passage of a law, that would save over 1,000 lives. You'd be heralded as a hero.
Yeah.
And people like Robin Lundstrom, who sponsored this bill, and the governor who signed it, others, lawmakers who voted for it, those of us that helped write the law, we are doing that. And I'm grateful to be in a position where we can. I mean, just imagine that those kids get to grow up like all the rest of us did. They get the same rights and privileges that all of us have enjoyed,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and understand that next year, 500 children will enter preschool and kindergarten because of that one law that was passed.
Imagine standing at the door of the school and watching those little 5-year-olds, 4 and 5-year-olds, walk into the school building with their little backpacks, with their bright eyes and smiling. They wouldn't be doing that if we had not stepped up and other good people stepped up. And see, when Judge Baker strikes down one of these laws, she's striking a blow at those little children. When the courts won't uphold these good laws, they're striking a blow at that. When Planned Parenthood goes out here and introduces this in court, trying to strike these down, they're striking a blow against those children. Mm-hmm. And that ought to be an outrage to all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and here the pro-life laws that we passed this past spring, this year, will save how many lives, Jerry?
Well, we think that they're going to save around 600 lives, about 620 if you want to just whittle it down to the exact number. And so not all of the laws that we passed this year are being challenged in court. Some are going into effect. Rules are being promulgated for the implementation of those good laws. But let me tell you about one that we got passed this year that I'm really excited about, hopeful about. Back several years ago, we worked with our friend Jason Rapert out of Conway, Senator Rapert, to pass a ban on abortions after the 12th week of pregnancy. And that, at that time, was the strongest pro-life law in the country. Well, as you can imagine, the courts just had a heyday with it, and they struck it down. So they said, nope, 12 weeks, can't do it. And so a few years later, Senator Mayberry, Andy Mayberry, got a law passed that said no abortions after the 20th week of pregnancy. And the court let that stand. So the court said 20 weeks you can ban abortions, 12 you can't. So this year we came back and said, okay, can't do 12, but you can do 20. How about 18? And now we're going to let the court chew on that one. Mm-hmm. And so if we are able to do that, we're probably going to save at least 100 lives every year from now on if that law is allowed to stand, because it dials it back a little bit. Yeah. So we just keep plugging away at it. Not all these laws are going to make it, but some will. And the ones who do, they're going to do a lot of good.
Yeah, we're definitely making such massive strides here. I mean, if you consider the fact that, Jerry, and I know you were on the front lines, I know you have been down there, advocating for the most vulnerable among us that don't have a voice, these children, back when we had Democrats who were just, controlling everything down there. And I remember Go ahead.
Yeah, Paul, we worked 10 years on one bill. 10 years on one bill. This year, the legislature passed 13 pro-life laws.
Wow.
13 in one session, where before we worked for 10 years on one bill. And it was just tough going back then. And we passed some other legislation during that interim or during that time, but the law we were trying to pass was just a simple little informed consent law that didn't restrict who could get an abortion. It just said you have to tell people about the risk of it. Mm-hmm. And my, oh my, the legislature just slammed us to the dirt every time we tried to run that bill. One committee in particular, the Health Committee in the Senate, was just especially hostile, and we did not get that bill passed until one member went to prison, some were term limited, and one went to Congress. And once those guys left, we saw new people come in, and we got our law passed, and Mike Huckabee signed it back in 2001.
That's fantastic.
So, it's a process, and you've got to be in it for the long haul, or, and realize that, you just do what you can do, and we've been doing that, and it's actually working quite well.
Well, I mean, the reason I wanted to bring up what we were like is because not only were the legislators hostile towards this idea of protecting the unborn, But you had people back home that simply thought it was none of their business. Many people didn't understand what we knew scientifically about life at conception. Now, some people did and chose to ignore, but you know what I mean? There were some people that just thought, oh, it's just a clump of cells. It's no big deal. And these were people that were going to church every Sunday, you know?
The ultrasounds have been our best friend.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you hold up that ultrasound, everybody does it now. They get an ultrasound of their unborn child. They bring it home and they show it around. I mean, you look in there, it's a baby, and any 2-year-old knows that. And so that's been our very best friend is science, and the science keeps confirming. I mean, now they do surgeries on little unborn children. Well, if you can do surgery on an unborn child, should you really be allowed to abort that child?
That's exactly right.
I mean, it's just, and we want to have understanding for women that have gone through an abortion. We know it's bad, it's difficult on them. We don't want to cast any condemnation on them, but at the same time, we just don't want other people to go through what some women have had to go through.
Can you talk about the one bill that we could get passed in 2021 that'll put Arkansas over the top and make us the number 1 pro-life state in the country instead of the number 2?
Well, I think one thing we need to do is we need to realize, and I know you asked me about abortion, but let me pivot just a smidgen, if I may, Paul, and talk about life in general. I think we have to start looking real hard at the totality of pro-life legislation, which takes us to the end of life. And that's a place where we need to be sure that we do not ever allow assisted suicide, and we don't allow the rationing of health care and a lot of other things that could really, really upend the whole pro-life side of things at the end of life. Because, see, some people think being pro-life just means being anti-abortion. And no, pro-life means being for the sanctity of human life all the way from conception till natural death. And so we're seeing a lot of movement around the country in the direction of saying, you know what, you've lived long enough, you're going to be really expensive to keep alive for these last 6 months, you need to go ahead and kill yourself.
Yeah.
Or we won't pay for it. Insurance companies maybe in some parts of the world saying we won't pay for it. And so I think that's an area that we need to really, really bear down on, is in that area. But I don't know that there is one like silver bullet anti-abortion bill that we could pass right now. I do look forward to the day when the federal courts dial back Roe versus Wade. And once they do that, we got working with Senator Rapert, bill he introduced. This year, there's a trigger bill now that says that except to save the life of the mother, abortion in Arkansas will be illegal if Roe is ever reversed. And see, that's called a trigger law, and that law is ready to go into action as soon as Roe is reversed. So if there is a silver bullet law out there, we may have already passed it.
Yeah.
And it's ready to go if Roe is ever reversed.
Jerry,
so,
we appreciate it.
Lots to do. Lots of good stuff to do.
Absolutely. Jerry Cox, president of the Family Council here in Arkansas. Folks, check him out, familycouncil.org. It's always great to talk to you, sir.
Thanks.
All righty. Appreciate you.